The house had stood at the end of a forgotten road, surrounded by withered trees that seemed to bend toward it in silent reverence. Time had stolen its color, leaving the walls a sickly shade between ash and bone. Ivy crept across its face like veins on a dying hand, and every step upon the porch moaned with the fatigue of decades. The man who bought it was a practical sort, someone who believed that creaks and whispers belonged only to the imagination. He moved in on a cold evening when the mist clung low and the wind carried no bird's song. The air inside smelled faintly of earth and rot, as though the house itself had been buried and unearthed again. He told himself it only needed air and light, though the windows refused to open. When night came, the silence inside felt too deliberate, like a breath held too long. He sat alone in the parlor, and for a moment he thought he could hear something beneath the floor, faint as a sigh. Then it stopped. Days passed without incident, yet the house carried a weight that pressed against his mind. He began to notice how each sound had its place: the ticking of the clock, the crackle of the fireplace, the faint scratching beneath the boards when all else went quiet. He told himself it was mice, perhaps, or pipes settling beneath years of neglect. But one night, the scratching became tapping, rhythmic and deliberate, echoing softly through the wooden floor. It seemed to answer the pattern of his own heartbeat, a slow and patient imitation. He pressed his ear to the boards and felt the faintest tremor, like fingers brushing from the other side. He withdrew quickly, ashamed of his own imagination, but the sound returned as soon as he stepped away. The tapping grew more confident, more insistent, as if it knew he was listening. He left the room, but it followed him, always beneath his feet, wherever he went. The man began sleeping in different rooms each night, thinking perhaps it was some trick of acoustics. Yet no matter where he lay, the tapping came again, always beneath him, always steady, never random. At times it stopped when he moved, as though waiting, listening. He took to drinking before bed, hoping to dull his senses, but even through the haze of whiskey, the rhythm found him. One evening, as rain lashed the windows, he felt a vibration in the floorboards so slight it might have been imagined. Then a whisper rose through the cracks, a fragile sound shaped like a word, but not quite human. He froze where he stood, holding his breath, his heart thundering in his chest. It came again, fainter now, as though retreating into the earth. He laughed nervously to himself, whispering that old houses have voices, and yet, deep inside, he felt watched. That night, he dreamed of a black space beneath the house, where something waited with open eyes. He tried to dismiss it, to bury the thought beneath work and routine, but the unease grew roots. When he walked through the halls, the walls seemed to close in, the wallpaper rippling faintly when he passed. Objects were never where he left them. The clock on the mantel shifted slightly each morning, chairs turned just enough to suggest a presence that moved them. He began to speak aloud to the empty air, asking if anyone was there, half mocking, half pleading. Silence always answered, until one night a low creak replied from the floor beneath his feet. He stared down, his mouth dry, every instinct urging him to leave. But his pride chained him in place. With trembling hands, he lit a candle and knelt to examine the boards. Dust clung to his fingers, the air thick and unmoving. For a long time, nothing stirred. Then came a faint pulse beneath the wood. A single thud, slow and certain, like the echo of a buried heart. The thought of something alive beneath him gnawed at his sanity. He considered leaving, but where would he go? The house had begun to feel like a trap, each door heavier than before, each window sealed by unseen hands. He could hear faint movements now at all hours, dragging sounds, soft knocks, whispers too low to understand. The cellar door creaked open one morning, though he knew he had locked it the night before. The cold that rose from below was unnatural, as if drawn from the grave. He closed it and nailed it shut, yet that night The tapping began again, louder, closer, coming from beneath his bed. He leapt up, his candle shaking, shadows jumping like frightened creatures across the walls. The sound stopped at once. He waited for his breath to steady, then leaned down and whispered into the cracks, asking what it wanted. The silence that followed felt heavier than any answer could have been. The next day, he decided to uncover whatever hid beneath the floor. He gathered tools and began prying up the boards, one by one, as dust spiraled in the dim light. Beneath the first few planks lay only cold soil and cobwebs, nothing more. But as he moved toward the center of the room, the air thickened, the smell of dampness rising like breath from below. The final plank resisted his pull, groaning as though it were alive. When it finally lifted, he saw a hollow space beneath, a cavity dug deep into the earth. Inside it rested a shape, half shrouded in darkness. His candlelight flickered, revealing not bones or debris, but a large dust-covered mirror. Its surface was dull, yet something about it felt wrong, as if it absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. He reached down, fingers trembling, and brushed away the dirt. The glass cleared slowly, revealing his reflection, or what should have been his reflection. At first, it seemed ordinary, the same weary face staring back. But then, as he leaned closer, the image blinked when he did not. It smiled when his lips did not move. Panic surged through him. He stumbled backward, the candle nearly falling from his hand. The image in the mirror tilted its head, studying him with something like curiosity. Then the tapping began again, louder now, but coming not from beneath the floor. It came from inside the mirror, as if someone trapped within were knocking to be released. He turned and fled from the room, his footsteps echoing through the house that now seemed to breathe with excitement. Behind him, the tapping did not stop. It grew faster, more frantic, following him with a sound like laughter. He barricaded himself upstairs, heart hammering, breath short. All night, he heard the floorboards shifting below, as though footsteps paced in the room he had left open. At dawn, silence returned. The light through the window was gray and lifeless, and he thought perhaps it had all been a dream. Gathering his courage, he descended the stairs. The mirror still lay in the hollow, uncovered. Its surface now gleamed clean, though he had not touched it again. He looked into it once more, compelled by something he could not resist. His reflection stared back, still and calm. Yet the room behind it was not the one he stood in. It showed a darker place, a version of the house that seemed swallowed by rot and shadow. Then, as he watched, his reflection raised its hand and pressed it against the glass. He felt the cold echo of that touch on his own palm. No one saw him again after that morning. The house stands silent still, the windows dark, the door locked from within. Those who pass by claim to hear faint tapping from inside, as if someone trapped beneath the boards still seeks to be found. Sometimes, on nights when the wind dies and the world holds its breath, a flicker of candlelight appears through the cracks, and if you dare to listen closely, you might hear it, the rhythm of a heartbeat, patient and steady, waiting for another to join it.